Session 4, Acceptance. So welcome. Today we are going to focus on acceptance. First, we're going to look at resistance, then we'll move through and unpack acceptance, and then we'll also look at misconceptions of acceptance and what that means for a daily mindfulness practice. But let's start with resistance. So in our daily lives, we can experience a variety of experiences. Some of them are pleasant and lovely, and others are less pleasant, like sitting in traffic or having arguments or having to do boring tasks. We experience both pleasant and unpleasant things in our daily life. And we employ different strategies to cope with them. We tend to embrace the positive and pleasant things, and we do our best to ignore and avoid the unpleasant experiences as much as possible. But those unpleasant things are inevitable. People will encounter negative things. It's just life. It's the way it works, and it can be really tragic. It could be death, it could be losing a good friend, it could be getting fired or becoming ill. There can be lots of negative consequences of just being alive and on this journey we call life. And when these experiences are more negative, we fight them. Of course we do. We don't want to experience them. So we say things like, I didn't sign up for this, and we do our best to resist those feelings and those experiences. But we get triggered. Our thoughts and actions and our coping strategies are triggered, and we go into old patterns of behavior to try and get rid of these negative experiences. So when something negative happens and we feel pain, we automatically want to stop that pain. We've been conditioned to distract or stop ourselves from feeling the unwanted or indeed unlovable states of being that we inherited throughout childhood. And when we start resisting pain, we enter a mode of wanting to get rid of it. And so an inner conflict emerges, a conflict between what's happening right now and on the end state. We start reaching for the feel-good factor because we want to stop the pain that we are in rather than leaning into the pain a little bit more. And so we create this conflict. We do everything to reduce the discrepancy between the undesired feeling and the desired feeling. And that exists between every moment that we are in a place that we don't want to be in. Our mind kicks in and we think, oh, I should be feeling this, or I should be doing that. You're kind of judging it as acceptable or unacceptable, or lovable or unlovable. And this inner conflict takes place. And we're constantly trying to reduce this discrepancy between where we are and where we think we should be. And we do lots of things to resist that. So we can try and suppress it. We can suppress the negative feelings and thoughts, and we do lots of different things to suppress that to make ourselves feel better. We can go into distraction mode and distract ourselves to get to this end state, this desired state of being happy all the time, regardless of how we're really feeling. We can do lots of reframing our feelings and lots of different cognitive tricks to make us feel better in the moment. And all of that is amazing, but used in the wrong way, it can keep us from our authentic self. It can keep us from where we truly are right now. Even positive thinking, the power of that can encourage a state of not feeling what is, which takes us away from the moment, from what is true in the now. And even that can be used as an avoidance tactic, which has its roots in resistance. So once we start resisting our current experience, our attention becomes focused on the desired goal state and takes us out of the present moment. So when this happens, we miss the opportunity to heal whatever we have been carrying for so long. We miss the opportunity to put the baggage we've been carrying around with us that have been getting heavier and heavier over the years, we miss the opportunity of putting that down. And it just keeps getting triggered and destined to play out over and over and over again until we turn into it, be with it, and sit with it a little bit. And when we do that and step out of resistance and acknowledge what it is, then we can do something positive about it. So I'm going to invite you to do this little 2-minute exercise, 2-minute seated meditation. So in this meditation, I'm going to ask you to control your thoughts. You can think of everything and anything that you want, except for a white elephant. So when the mind does think of a white elephant, notice it and register it and label it white elephant, but then let it go. I want you to try and suppress every thought of a white elephant. So let go of the need to get this right. Simply see how it goes. So make sure you're not driving. Sit comfortably, resting your hands gently on your lap, straightening your upper body. Let the soles of your feet ground themselves into the floor. Drop your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Soften your face. And slightly lower your chin. Shut your eyes or soften your gaze and relax. Bringing your attention to your breath. Remembering you're allowed to think of anything you want, except for a white elephant. Okay, so just take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Send that breath all the way down to your toes and give them a little wiggle. And another nice deep breath, sending it to your fingers, give them a little wiggle. And then open your eyes, come back to the room. And just notice what you notice. What was that like for you? So if you're like most people, you may have found it a bit of a challenge to suppress the thought of the white elephant. You know, to reach the goal state of not thinking of the white elephant is often impossible, as we find ourselves thinking even more of what we're trying not to think of. It's paradoxical. But the subconscious mind can oftentimes ignore the negative, such as don't, and will focus on the desired command, white elephant. That's why language is so very important in when we're speaking to others, especially our children. But that kind of bounding back is called the rebound effects. So when we suppress thoughts, the paradoxical effect is we think more of the thoughts we were trying to get away from. The same as when we try to control sleep, we end up not being able to sleep. The same with controlling weight. When we're always thinking of, I must lose weight, the subconscious mind is focusing in on the weight part and the underlying implication that I am fat. So we create more of that within our lives. More behavior comes and is triggered from that, what we're trying to avoid. So avoiding the experience we are currently in by using coping trust strategies like suppression, like distraction, reframing, even positive thinking may help us temporarily, but once we are no longer distracted, those feelings, thoughts, and life experiences will simply resurface. We need to go to the places we have been avoiding. The only way out is in. So acceptance is the opposite of avoidance. And rather than moving away from what's happening, mindfulness is a willingness, if you like, to experience what is present. Mindfulness is about being able to connect with whatever is present, negative or positive. It's about really going there and being with yourself in all your gory glory, truthfully and honestly. The present moment focus, which is also a characteristic of mindfulness, is applied in emotional regulation. So rather than focusing on the end state of not feeling what you are feeling, mindfulness is about recognizing what you are feeling in the present moment and naming that, staying in contact with that, staying in contact with what is happening right here and right now for you, in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your environment, and allowing yourself to feel that. So this is something that's been conditioned out of us as children, because for many of us, our big emotions, labeled tantrums, but in fact were our times of struggle, could not be handled by the significant others in our lives. It takes emotional intelligence to hold the space for someone who's struggling with big emotions. And if someone hasn't been taught that or hasn't got a significant amount of emotional intelligence, then, all those old coping strategies come out, and we're stopped as children being allowed to work through those difficult feelings. We're stopped with various methods, from like chocolate biscuits to being separated from the rest of the family to being slapped. We were taught that who we are in our times of despair were unlikable, were unlovable, and as such we needed to suppress that, hide that, distract, and not feel those feelings or voice our upset. But can you imagine what a different landscape it will be when our children have grown in an environment with a mindful practice as the cornerstone of life? That's going to be amazing. When we give our children space, support, and the guidance to be and work through their difficult experience, it's amazing how fast they move through it. And it's amazing how fast we move through it. So when we're given this space, the experience, when we're given that space where the experience isn't allowed to be felt, acknowledged, and understood, it gets stuck. It becomes that trigger that keeps getting played out. We keep attracting the perfect people, the perfect situation, the perfect opportunity to keep pressing those buttons so that we keep playing out all of that until adulthood. And we do that in the hope that we'll eventually understand it and acknowledge it and own it and work through it. And when we do that, we get to clear it. So the best thing to do right now is, from this moment onwards, is rather than focusing on getting rid of what we are experiencing, mindfulness offers you an opportunity to lean into the current experience instead. Yeah, connecting into the way you are feeling right now. And when you do that, there's an opportunity to clear that stuff that you've been carrying around for all these years. Because when we feel that pain, that fear, that sadness, mindfulness helps us accept this is what is happening for us right now, without judgment, without thoughts of this shouldn't be happening, this is not okay, it should be different, I'm not strong enough or worthy enough or good enough, and allowing oneself to feel what is real and authentic right now. Accepting oneself for having these feelings and staying in contact with them is key, without judgment. So in this way, you'll move through the experience quicker. So there's a little graph here. You honor yourself and your needs, and those feelings will become less stuck. So most of the time, we'll intervene early on and we'll try and control it. As that feeling arises in intensity, we try and control it. We try a coping strategy like suppression or distraction. But by letting it rise and fall and practicing the art of observation, taking a step back and knowing that these feelings come and they go, allowing it to take its natural course rather than modifying and stopping it and controlling it, will free you up to be able to be in this ebb and flow cycle. Now that is accepting. Resisting is about controlling and modifying and essentially stopping the natural flow of feeling and awareness, which then leads into understanding and acceptance. But we can also resist pleasant situations. We can also be unaccepting of pleasant situations. People can find it very hard to enjoy the moment and accept the good into their lives for many reasons, but predominantly for fear of the bad following. Positive situations can be less difficult to deal with, but the conflict arises when you try to hold on to the good times, even when the natural ebb and flow of that has subsided. We don't want to acknowledge that the good times are over, or indeed will never be. We get attached to the good times in the same paradoxical way, and we lose the beauty of the moment. So this happens a lot with relationships. They start so well, but then the mind kicks in with what could go wrong in the future, and a conflict emerges, between what is happening right now and what could happen in the future. We believe the stories we tell ourselves, and thus the self-created prophecy unfolds. So mindfulness in this context means that everything is transient and has its season. Everything comes and everything goes. And this makes life what it is: beautiful, an ever-changing, dynamic adventure. Because life would be boring and static if everything was perfect and stayed the same all the time. The ebb and flow of life makes life exciting. Mindfulness is about being in the experience rather than avoiding the changes. As my granny used to say, this too shall pass. And that's not just for the bad, but also for the good. It comes and it goes. It's about going with the flow and accepting life and acknowledging that it's about what you do with those experiences, how you respond, that matters. So life is about experiencing it all in its fullness, including the pleasant moments, including the negative moments, connecting yourself fully with the now. So there are some common misconceptions when it comes to acceptance that I think we really need to cover. Acceptance is not indifference. It's not about not caring anymore or feeling like you don't make a difference anymore. Mindfulness is caring about life and how you interact with it. It's not about liking or agreeing with. For example, if someone wrongly accuses you, it's not about just agreeing with them and rolling over. You know, I call this being a spiritual doormat, when suddenly everything is your fault. You take full responsibility for everything, your stuff and theirs. It's not about that. And it's also not about passive resignation. It's not resigning to what is, or indeed giving up. Now, accepting and surrendering and giving up are two very different things. One's steeped in not being good enough and feels like defeat and hopelessness, and the other is lighter and it's clearer and it's a conscious decision and has been made to connect deeper to what is, leaning into what is a little bit more, and that's really active. Acceptance is a willingness to experience your inner world and life. It's not passive, but an active mode in getting in contact with things and moving things forward. We can accept in mindfulness is not the situation or what someone tells us, but accepting our personal feelings and thoughts about what is true for us in any given moment. Now, this requires us to be in tune, if you like, with these feelings and thoughts. And in order to do that, we need to open up a line of dialogue with the self. It's about letting go of that control, letting go of what is happening, not wanting to let go of the positive things, or indeed our perception of what could be positive in the future. Letting go of negative things and trying to jump the path to the positive state of being without feeling the feelings and moving through what we're experiencing with understanding and awareness. So once this happens, once we connect in with what is going on for us, what is true, and we accept the situation, we have to then own it. And in doing this, we take up full responsibility of that. And then we need to act on it. We need to do something about it. And in essence, this is why people tend not to go there, not to accept the unacceptable, but push it aside, distract, talk it down, hide from what is, because deep down we all know that once we face our stuff, what's really going on for us, what's really acceptable, what's really not acceptable, then it's up to us and only us to do something about it. So what does acceptance actually mean? Imagine someone wrongfully accuses you. What you accept here are the feelings of anger and frustration or sadness that emerges up inside of you, but without spewing it all back onto that person. Acceptance is about the experience that was triggered inside of you, your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So in this situation, say you express your discontent with the accusation. And why not? You know, acceptance is not about rolling over and taking responsibility for it all. It's about setting clear boundaries and expressing what it is that feels wrong to you. It's not about accepting an other's behavior. That's their job. That's not your job. So another example, say you're waiting for a train and the train's delayed and now you're late for an appointment, and this triggers anger, frustration, disappointment. It's that you accept, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment. It's this that you connect in with and lean into deeper, but without projecting them onto another. without spewing it out right, left, and center. It's this that you connect in with. And by doing so, you will then move through that quicker. You know, accepting that you're now on this platform for another hour and will be late, accepting that this is your now, brings you to the place where you can then make the arrangements that are needed. You can act from that space. But accepting the now for what is doesn't mean you can just simply take the consequences of being late and missing your crucial appointment. It means that when you get home, you file a complaint with the railway organisation to see what compensation, you know, that you get. Acceptance and boundaries go hand in hand, but can only happen once you truly know what is acceptable to you and what is not. And from that place of awareness, you can act. Accepting that some things are not acceptable and doing what needs to happen is also acceptance. Accepting the emotion creates space between the event, your appraisal of the event is negative, the emotion you feel from appraising the event, say it's anger, and the automatic reaction, say shouting. So by accepting an emotion, you take responsibility for experiencing this emotion. There is nothing wrong with experiencing an emotion. It's only a reaction, a natural reaction to the situation or a thought. But by taking a moment to observe the event, the thoughts about the event and the emotion, and accepting all of these things, you can avoid this scenario where the emotion speaks for you, where you project that out onto another, where you spew it out onto another. So from this space, you can choose how you want to deal with the situation. Do you accept the situation? Will you raise your voice to make it apparent you do not agree with it? Will you stay calm and say what's on your mind? None of these options are right or wrong, but you get to choose what comes next. So of course you'll notice, especially when it concerns intense emotions, that it is often impossible to constantly be in a state of acceptance. It's more of an interplay between acceptance and resistance that takes place, and that is perfectly fine. You're creating an inner dialogue, a connection, a pathway between you and your inner world. And from that place, you'll be able to see what is acceptable and what is not, what the decisions that you would like to make, the choices that you are that you have. Rather than being in reaction, you are now in creation. So have a little look throughout the rest of this week. See for yourself if you can become more aware of this interplay between acceptance and resistance, of noticing what you notice and how you voice that, set your boundaries, or don't. So your little bit of homework is we have a little take a mindful pause meditation. So if you could feed that into your day about 3 times a day or whenever you need to use it, you can find that at the end of the workbook. And also throughout the week, try to be a bit more conscious around the way you deal with pleasant or unpleasant situations. Notice where there is resistance and how you deal with this resistance, or notice where there is acceptance, true acceptance. Notice where you may roll over and try and own everything, or where you resist and try and own nothing. Just notice what you notice and do as many seated meditations as you can. When you do the seated meditation this time, though, be attentive to the emergence of any conflicts or struggles. Notice any resistance that comes up for you, either before you start to do the meditation. Even now, as I'm talking about doing the seated meditation, did you did you feel any resistance or strong urges that rose up in you? Notice what you notice. And again, journaling is really good practice. Okay, so thanks for your attention.